Alright, what's going on, guys? C-Brev here, doing another coaching video. If you would like to be coached by me, as always, hit me up on Twitter. You can follow me or at me, and then I'll follow you back, and we can talk in Twitter DMs about coaching for you. I think it's been a really good experience for the people so far, so we're going to keep it going. And yeah, basically you just want to upload a private YouTube video, send me the link, tell me some things you want to work on, and then I'll analyze your gameplay and we'll go from there. So today we're going to be coaching Chino Daddy. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's always commenting on my videos. Really good viewer, subscriber to the channel, so happy to help him with the coaching here. He played a game at 699 rating. He said he's made Championship Series twice this year and he wants to get over the hump to World Series. So just starting it off, based on watching this gameplay, I think you're more than capable of making World Series. I honestly think the biggest thing that's going to help you is more reps, playing more often, just playing more games in general, because as far as hitting goes, your PCI was pretty good, your approach was pretty good, everything was pretty good. A lot of the mistakes you were making, you will stop making with more experience, if that makes sense. So the big thing you want to work on as the overarching theme for this coaching, my friend, is that you just need to learn more about baseball in general and about how things work in the game, like specific game mechanics. So a lot of your mistakes were just due to inexperience, in my opinion, and so I think this is going to help you a lot. Obviously, we're going to break them down. But starting with your lineup, you got Willie Mays on the bench. I know this is probably like an emotional thing, like you feel like you can't hit anything with Willie Mays, but I'm always the first one to say that if you have Willie Mays, he needs to be starting every game. If Willie Mays hits 200 for you, he's still better than any other outfielder in the game because he plays defense that nobody else plays. The animations, the reaction, the speed, he's just a must-have. If you have Willie Mays, he's got to be starting. I don't know if you just benched him because it was on All-Star, but even on All-Star, he has really good power numbers. So, I don't know. I would probably swap him out for Ted Williams or Mike Trout because Bellinger is a beast. But yeah, you need Ted Williams in there. That's the biggest thing that I noticed with your lineup. You also have some weird pitchers in here. I think it's because you're in a lineup that says All-Star, and so I think you're following my All-Star advice, which is good, kind of pitchers that throw slow and generate weak contact. So this rotation is fine. Given that you're playing on All-Star, just keep in mind that once you get above 700 rating, that you have a chance to play on Hall of Fame any given game, and that pretty much every pitcher you have except Kershaw is really bad on Hall of Fame. All four of these are All-Star pitchers only, pretty much. So you were at 699 when this game started. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume that you knew you were going to be playing on All-Star. But just keep in mind that once you're above 700, you can always end up playing on Hall of Fame. That's a thing. So skipping ahead to the matchup, one thing I wanted to talk about is that the way your lineup was set was good. This is what we always want to talk about. You're following a lot of things that I preach, which I appreciate. One of the things I said in my Mike Trout review / 10th inning program video was that because Mike Trout has reverse splits, meaning he hits righties better than lefties as a right-handed hitter, that when you set your lineup, you need to pretend that he's left-handed. So I'm going to pretend that he's left-handed because he hits righties better. That's how you should approach that. So that's why your lineup is really good. You got speed at the top, power in the middle, and you're alternating righty-lefty because this is technically lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty. This is a glitch. He has Finest Bellinger in there. I don't know why it showed the picture for live series, but this is Finest Bellinger. Anyway, this is left, left, right, and then right switch. Maybe you could put your catcher 7th just to split up the righties, but it's not a huge deal. I actually like hitting switch hitters lead off or 8-hole the most, so I actually like your lineup a lot, so good job. Your opponent, on the other hand, is making a lot of lineup mistakes, and I'm just going to bring this up for everyone watching because this is supposed to be educational for everyone as well. So why is his opponent's lineup super bad? I'm going to be brutally honest here. I'm sorry, Chef Arlo, if you're watching this. I don't think it's possible to have set this lineup worse. I'm just going to put that out there. This is technically 4 lefties in a row, followed by 2 righties in a row, followed by 2 switch hitters in a row. So you'll see later in the game, this is gonna, like, your opponent, it works out for him sometimes, I guess, but your opponent could have been punished a lot if your bullpen was more rested than it was. This is honestly just terrible lineup setting, if I'm being completely honest. The way I would set this lineup is probably Ozzie first, Grandal 8th, and then I would probably go, obviously, alternating righty-lefty. The problem is he has technically 4 lefties and 2 righties, so you're in a bit of a pickle there. Maybe try to swap out, like, Pete Alonso for Freddie Freeman or something to get a right-handed bat in there. Just wanted to point that out. This lineup needs a lot of work from his opponent. Just wanted to put that out there for you guys. So there's 3 things I want to talk about with your gameplay specifically before we go to the individual clips. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mouse through all the spots in the game where I took notes on things that I wanted to point out. So we're going to do it a little differently. We're not going to watch the game all the way through like we did in the first coaching video. I'm just going to pick my spots. But in general, 3 things that I noticed with you, my friend, is that you are pitching with classic and that your cursor placement with changeups and sliders needs a little bit of work. So when you were throwing sliders and changeups, you're putting them pretty low in the zone. You're still hitting. How did I miss an inning where you're pitching? You're putting them pretty low in the zone, like a little bit too low. So just as an example, you're putting your slider, like the ball is like right here. The same with changeup, you were putting it like pretty much on the black line. This is probably a little bit off, and you were missing a lot of pitches borderline. So when I pitch with classic and I use sliders and changeups, my cursor is usually about like in the lower quadrants of the strike zone if I'm trying to throw them for a strike. If you have them down here, which is where you were, you're much more likely to throw balls. And you were throwing a lot of balls with those pitches, and I could tell you weren't very comfortable throwing those pitches. It also could be a repetitions thing. Maybe you haven't pitched with Matthew Boyd a lot, which would make sense because Matthew Boyd isn't that great above All-Star. Just something to keep in mind, your cursor placement with sliders and changeups. I think if you just raise it a little bit, you'll end up throwing more strikes. Also, sticking with pitching, I noticed that you weren't ever challenging your opponent. And by challenging your opponent, I'm mostly talking about throwing fastballs up and in. Once again, I don't know if this is because you were pitching with Matthew Boyd and you didn't feel confident because his velocity is not that high, but I don't think you threw up and in fastball to your opponent a single time this entire game, which is a mistake because by the end of the game, your opponent was doing pretty well at hitting the low pitches, and your pitch selection was kind of pretty predictable because everything you threw was low pretty much. The couple times that you did throw high, like there was one at bat where you threw an up and in slider on a 2-1 count to a righty, and he literally swung late and flew out, and it was a perfect situation. So just try to pitch up more. I don't know if you're pitching scared because it was a close game or if it was an issue with Matthew Boyd, but you're pitching low a lot, and you need to be moving the eye level just as much as you're going in and out. One easy way for you to kind of test the water and see if you can challenge your opponent, and then you can put that in your back pocket later, is with some of his weaker power hitters in the lineup. So he does have Ichiro in the lineup. He also has Ozzie Smith in the lineup. Those are 2 guys that I would target where you just throw a fastball up and in and see what they do with it, because those guys are less likely to take you deep on that pitch if they turn on it than other guys in his lineup. So that's how I would have approached it. Whenever Ichiro or Ozzie Smith came up, maybe the first couple times through the lineup, I would be throwing a lot inside, a lot of hard stuff, and just see if your opponent can turn on it. Because there are people in this game that just cannot turn on a fastball, and you need to be taking advantage of that. You didn't even really see if he could. You were kind of respecting your opponent a lot. So that's what I wanted to talk about. The last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of a pet peeve of mine, and I actually think this is going to help you out a lot. You're spazzing like crazy with your PCI before pitchers are thrown. It's like actually insane. We're gonna watch it at 2x, so it's like it looks worse because it's faster on 2x speed, but like this stuff you're doing with your PCI is like way over the top and completely unnecessary. This is just my personal opinion, but people who just spaz their left joystick before the pitch is thrown and then say, well, it's to keep my fingers loose, I think that's just wrong, in my opinion. I don't think you gain honestly anything from just like moving the joystick a bunch uh, before the pitch comes in. Like, hitting is very rhythmic to me. It was always like that in real life too. And so what I do with my PCI is I take an opportunity to kind of load. You know how in real baseball you have to load and then come through the ball, and you usually load before the pitch is thrown. So what I do with my PCI is I load my PCI while the pitcher's in the windup, and then by the time he releases the ball, I'm ready to go. So I start my PCI middle in, but it sits middle until my opponent's windup starts. So I hold it here, and then once his windup starts, I kind of load into the middle in with my PCI, and that helps me like with the rhythmic part of hitting. Spazzing your joystick all around before the pitch is very random, and it doesn't actually help you a lot, in my opinion, because you can make the argument that you're keeping your finger loose, but you're keeping your finger loose in a random way that's unpredictable that you can't repeat from game to game. So how are you really going to improve without setting habits and rhythms as a hitter? If you're just spazzing all around before every pitch, you're not really coming set in a way that's giving you the best chance to see the ball thoroughly. Like, even on some of these pitches, you didn't even really stop the PCI until the ball's like coming. Like, that pitch was pretty close. Like, here, you really didn't load until he was pretty much coming through the ball. So my personal suggestion is to just chill. I don't think this, once again, these are always my opinion, but I don't think this helps anyone that does this, honestly. I don't think it's good. So those are the things I wanted, the three things I wanted to talk about, really, and now we're kind of we're going to mouse through some game situations, because like I said, learning about baseball, learning about game mechanics, that's what's going to help you the most. So first thing I want to talk about is top fourth. You have Javi Baez at the plate with no one out, no one on. He's leading off the inning, and you end up getting into a 2-0 count with him. This is especially important, A, with guys with decent speed, and B, with guys that get shifted, that you're extra patient in this situation, because technically, especially if you're pull happy, you're at a disadvantage in this at bat because no one is on base, so the opponent is allowed to put the shift on for Javi Baez. So no one out, no one on, leading off the inning in a 1-0 game, you should be taking this 2-0 pitch every single time, because you're technically at a disadvantage with the shift, and there's really no reason to swing there. So you swing over a sinker. Granted, it wasn't a very good pitch, but that's something that could have been prevented. So just something to note. We'll skip all the way ahead. Now it is top fifth, 1-1 game, and you hit a single to get runners on first and second. And now your cap is coming up, who's your 8-hole hitter. This is one of those situations that's a break point in the game that I talked about in my high leverage managerial decision video. Given the state of this game, it's highly likely that you're going to get your pitcher spot up with a runner in scoring position in a tie game with less than 2 outs. And so you definitely have to be thinking about pinch hitting here, especially given the fact that Tom Seaver's only at 58 pitches, and it's highly unlikely that he's going to take Tom Seaver out, and therefore you can guarantee yourself a lefty versus righty matchup off the bench. You can also look at your opponent's bullpen and see if anyone's even warming up, and this can further guarantee that you get the matchup that you want. So what should be happening here, first and second, no one out, 8-hole guy up, is that you should be warming up a pitcher right now, because there's a lot of situations where pinch hitting is going to be good for you in the next at bat. So you didn't warm up the pitcher, which is a mistake in my opinion. I think especially on All-Star, you need to be taking advantage of these opportunities, because it's easier to drive in runs on All-Star, and also the specific pitcher that you have in the game doesn't matter as much because everyone gets destroyed pretty much. So I think that was a mistake. Sorry. And then I think you leave your starter in because you didn't have anyone warming up, so you don't end up pinch hitting in this situation, which I think is a mistake, and you might have missed out on some runs here. So there's also a secondary mistake to this situation, which is that you're swinging in this situation. So if you are going to decide to leave your pitcher in here with 2 on, 1 out, it's incredibly important that you just strike out on purpose. This always sucks, and I hate doing it, but it's always the right play, because your leadoff hitter, who's Mike Trout, I believe, who's going to have 120 power against the pitcher that's on the mound right now, because he's right-handed, and you're going to have 2 runners on. Having Mike Trout come up with 2 runners on in that situation is huge for you. There's no situation where you should ever be swinging here. I don't even like bunting here because they can always turn a double play because bunting sucks on this game and it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. So honestly, the very best play you can do here is to strike out on purpose and get Mike Trout up with 2 on 2 out. So you swing first pitch with your pitcher, which I think is a huge mistake. If you actually look at where this ball comes in, if this was a sinker instead of a 4-seamer, you would have grounded into a double play here, which is exactly what you do not want to do. It would have killed your entire inning. So I'm going to, whoops. So I was a little late, but the ball came in at about this tunnel and you swung. It was pretty much a center swing because it was a pitch right down the middle. But if it had been a sinker, it would have ended up here and you're just grounding into a double play for no reason. So kind of beating a dead horse, but you need to strike out there. It's the only play, really, especially given that Mike Trout is on deck. So you do get 2 on 2 out, and here is something you did really good. I don't know if you did it because of this reason, but the only situation you can send 47 speed home here is if your opponent has a weak arm in center field, which he does because this is Mike Trout. So sending this runner home is actually good because this center fielder is Mike Trout. If that was Willie Mays there, the correct play is to not send the runner and just hit with the bases loaded. This same exact situation happens right after here too. Once again, 55 speed. The reason you can send him home is because Mike Trout's in center field. But if that was Willie Mays, probably not the move. So just keeping that in mind. All right, skipping ahead, you're in a little trouble on the mound. You have bases loaded, 4-2 game, and you're facing Freddie Freeman with a lefty. So at this point in the game, you did have people warming up, but I like that you stuck with Matthew Boyd because you want the left-on-left matchup with Freddie Freeman. One thing you never did in the entire game that I think would have helped you in several spots, specifically in this at-bat that's coming up here, is that you never mound visited. Mound visits are huge, especially in big situations, because this goes back to learning game mechanics for you. When you mound visit, it actually gives your pitcher confidence, like his confidence bar moves up more, and pitcher confidence affects the amount of RNG you have on the mound, like if you are going to get an out on a bad pitch, pretty much. Like that's the most basic way I can explain it. Nobody really knows exactly how pitcher confidence works, but the higher your pitch confidence is, for sure the more likely you're going to be able to hit your spot with analog pitching, and there's debatably the fact that you have better chances with RNG if you make a bad pitch. So it's always good to mound visit. You get a lot of them. Just be careful not to overdo it because they will make you change your pitcher if you do it too often. But you hadn't done it a single time this game, and with bases loaded, 2 outs in a 2-run game, this has to be a mound visit 100% of the time because, see if I can scroll a little bit back. Let's see where your pitcher confidence is at when this at bat starts. So it's about half. I hate that double clicking takes you out of the full screen, dude. It was about half. You could have gotten that pitcher confidence up to like 3/4 just for a free mound visit. So that's something you need to work on. It's mound visiting in big spots. But like I said, don't overdo it because they'll force you to make a change. So skipping ahead to this Ernie Banks at bat. This is something I noticed with you as well. Once again, game mechanics. You're pretty much exclusively moving your runners using L1 and R1, which is advance all or retreat all. I think this is bad. I always move my runners by selecting them individually and then telling them what base to go to. So if you guys don't know, you can use the left stick to move your cursor onto a base runner, just like point it at wherever they are. And then you can push the buttons to just tell them what base to run to. So like if this ball comes off the bat and I think it's going to be a double, I can just mouse to my guy and hit triangle, and that'll tell my guy to run to second base, and it'll say second next to his name. This is infinitely better than using L1, R1 because specifically when you have multiple runners on base, L1, R1 can mess you up a lot because you could want to send one guy home but retreat another guy, and so that's why I'm mousing over each person. So like if you have a runner on first and you hit a double in the gap, you can mouse over the guy that was on first and press X. That'll send him home. And then you can mouse over the guy that just hit and press triangle and have him stop at second base. And then you don't have to worry about telling guys to go to the wrong places. So a lot of people know this already, but I just wanted to point it out for you because it's kind of important and it almost cost you a base runner here. So I think you honestly thought this ball was gone because you didn't even do L1. You just like let your guy stop at first base. But obviously never assume a ball is gone. Every time a ball goes off the bat, I always mouse over and just click on whatever base I think I should go to if the ball lands. Even on like lazy flyouts, because you never know what happens. It's not that hard to just put in the extra 2 keystrokes to just put second base on this guy. So this ball ends up hitting the wall and you get a late jump to second base and you're almost out. So just work on mousing over your base runners and telling them what base to go to, and never ever assume a ball is gone unless you get a no doubt home run animation. Yeah, so a little bit of a mistake there. On to this big at bat. You have bases loaded, 1 out versus Blake Trinan, and you end up striking out by swinging late on a sinker. This is okay. It's not the worst at bat, but again, I think this is just learning the game in general. Blake Trinan, all 4 of his pitches are very hard, like to the point where if you swing early on his slider, you'll probably at least get a foul ball anyway, because like all of his pitches he just throws with high velocity. And so in this situation, your bat has to be faster than normal, because being late is infinitely worse than being early against a pitcher like Blake Trinan, because if you're late, you give yourself almost no chance to hit any pitch except slider, whereas if you're early, you give yourself a chance to hit 3 of his pitches and just be early on the slider if it happens to be one. So just from a pure guessing perspective, it's way better to have a fast bat against a pitcher like this than a slow bat. A lot of sinker cutter guys are like this too as well. So we don't have to watch the whole at bat, but because you struck out late, I felt like I had to mention it. Your bat should be a little quicker against a pitcher like that. Once again, big game mechanic thing, and this I think is going to be super helpful for everyone watching this as well. This is just something you have to learn by playing a lot. It took me a month or 2 to learn this myself, and I didn't know if you made this mistake because you were pressing or if because you really didn't know about this. But this is easily your biggest mistake of the game. So bases loaded, 2-2 count, and he buries one in the dirt that gets by the catcher. And you send the runners home, and you end up getting out. So this kills your entire inning, and it could have been easily preventable if you had just known better in terms of the game mechanics. So for all of you guys watching, if you have a runner on third and the ball gets by the catcher, 99 times out of 100, it's better just to not send them. Very, very rarely will the ball get away far enough for someone to score from third base on this year's game. It's just the way the game works. They're going to get that animation where the catcher slides into the ball and just fires it to the pitcher who's covering perfectly, and you're going to be out. Like, if I'm in this situation and like I don't know if I'm ever sending the runners there, just because I've been burned so many times by that. Like, it's so hard to score on a pass ball from third base this year. And especially with 2 outs, and given that this was the third ball, you would have been in a 3-2 count, meaning the runners were moving, hopefully. You would be able to send the runners, and you have bases loaded with finest Cody Bellinger up against a right-handed relief pitcher who's not that highly rated. So this was a gigantic mistake. I'm sure you know that. And moving forward, just understand the situation, and like I said, 99 times out of 100, just don't send the runner from third on a pass ball, because most of the time it's just not going to work out for you. That's unfortunate. That's not real baseball, but that's how the game works this year. So huge missed opportunity. Man, you could have had 3-2 runners moving with Cody Bellinger at the plate, bases loaded. It just sucks. I know you know it sucks, but I got to talk about it. So luckily you got the dub in this game. Spoiler alert, so nice job. Next thing is this pinch hit here. So you are now down, or is it 6-6? Yeah, it's a 6-6 game, and your opponent has a righty in, and you decide to pinch hit with Ichiro instead of Duke Snider. I think this is a mistake. Duke Snider is an infinitely better pinch hitter here because you're in a decently high leverage situation. You have a runner in scoring position at second base. Not only that, but because you're using Ted Williams in the outfield, Ichiro can be used as a defensive replacement later as well, as can Willie Mays. But Duke Snider's just better here, given the pros and cons of each, right? So if he leaves a righty in, Duke Snider is way better than Ichiro in this situation. If he goes to a lefty, you can instantly go to counter with Alex Bregman, who has basically perfect stats versus lefties, so there's a win-win there. And then either way, you still have Mays and Suzuki on the bench to make a defensive replacement later in the game if you need to. So I think pinch hitting with Ichiro here was a mistake. I for sure would have gone with Duke Snider there. I don't know if you're just more comfortable with Ichiro at the plate. That could have been it. But if you're that uncomfortable with Duke Snider that you didn't put him in this situation, then you should probably just find a different left-handed bat to go on your bench, honestly. That's just my opinion. Another thing here is with your bullpen. This is a thing I've noticed a lot, reviewing a lot of these guys that are in the 6, 7, 800s, coaching them. People, once again, game mechanics, people vastly underestimate how bad it is to pitch with a bullpen pitcher that's tired. It's one of the worst things you can do on this game, because the reason people don't understand is because they haven't played enough to realize that when your pitcher is this tired, your opponent's PCI is going to get gigantic. If your bullpen pitcher is ever in the yellow energy, your opponent's PCI is growing bigger with every pitch that you throw, and it's going to get literally like bigger than the size of the strike zone, even on legend difficulty. Pitching with guys with yellow energy, pitching with guys that are tired in general, like past maybe this point of energy, is just really bad online, because your opponent's PCI is going to be so big that even if they make a bad swing, they might get rewarded anyway, more often than not. So unfortunate, but in my opinion, you're just going to have to roll with righties the rest of the game. If it was me, both Zach Britton and Billy Wagner would be completely out of commission for this game, because not only are you going to be at a huge disadvantage pitching someone that's this tired, but you're not going to allow them to recover for the next game either. So it's just doubly bad. Something I really want to stress, because I keep seeing this over and over from people, is that you need to respect these low energy bullpen guys and just let them rest. Play within your means. You have 4 other pitchers, granted they're all righties, but you have 4 other pitchers that can get it done for you this game. You don't always need righty-lefty, especially in a situation where you're going to put yourself in a much worse situation by doing this. So you shouldn't even be warming up Billy here. Eckersley should just be the move, or whoever you trust for the 8th inning. Especially because after Trout in his lineup as well is a bunch of guys who are worse against righties. So that's just a thing. Another big mistake here, which is actually in the same sequence all this stuff happens, is your opponent actually counters with Josh Hader, and you leave Ichiro in. So I'm not really sure why you didn't counter with Alex Bregman here. You have a guy on your bench that, like I said, has pretty much perfect stats versus left-handed pitching, and it's a tie game in the 8th inning with a runner in scoring position. So honestly, absolutely no excuse for this. Sorry, man. Absolutely no excuse for this. You should be pinch hitting for Ichiro with Alex Bregman right now. I understand, like, maybe you're thinking it might go to extras and I might need that bat later, but this is a big enough situation where it's warranted to just burn through your bench for the best matchup, because by driving this run in, you're giving yourself a better chance for the game to not go to extra innings anyway, right? This is almost like playing not to lose instead of playing to win, if that's the mindset that you had, if that was the reason you didn't pinch hit for Ichiro. I don't really know, obviously, but the opportunity to have a runner on second, 1 out with Alex Bregman versus a lefty here is so huge, and it's really disappointing that you didn't take advantage of this. So just keep that in mind. You end up driving in the run, so it works out, but I think that was a mistake for sure. Back to you pitching in the 9th. So you ended up going to Billy Wagner, which again is a mistake. Like, I understand you don't know because you can't see your opponent's PCI, but when your energy is this low, your opponent's PCI is just literally so much bigger than it should be. It's bad. You also should have, now that Billy Wagner's in the game, you probably should have just pitched to Trout with him and then made the switch. This goes back to Mike Trout having reverse splits in that he hits righties better. You actually did this twice this game, where you brought in a righty to face Mike Trout when you had a lefty on the mound. Granted, your lefties were tired, but I think you probably should have just left the lefty in. It's close, though. Because Billy Wagner is tired, it's close, but if Billy Wagner wasn't tired, that would have been the move to just leave him in for sure. So just remember that guys have certain splits and that Mike Trout has reverse splits. So 48-04. So this is another missed opportunity. This one's more about learning baseball than game mechanics, but it still kind of goes hand in hand. So you end up slapping a double with Ted Williams here. And this is the top of the 9th inning, and you're up by 1. So this is the ideal opportunity for when you go into the bottom of the 9th to have a defensive replacement for Ted Williams, since Ted Williams does not play good defense, especially in a park that has a really big outfield like Coors Field. So once he's on base, you can actually kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone by pinch running for him. You also, given the fact that Josh Hader is in the game, you could have pinch hit for him as well with Willie Mays, since Willie Mays destroys lefties. Once again, goes back to I don't know what your confidence level is with Willie Mays, but at the very least, when you're in this position with Ted Williams on first, you should be pinch running for Ted Williams with Willie Mays, because it accomplishes a pinch run and it accomplishes the defensive replacement at the same time. And if you end up doing an extra base hit here, you give yourself a much better chance to actually drive the run home if you pinch run. So in the bottom of the 9th, you actually did end up replacing Ted Williams with Willie Mays. So that was the good defensive replacement, but you could have done it earlier and got an extra advantage by pinch running here for Ted Williams with Willie Mays. So just wanted to point that out. You also, like I said, could have pinch hit just to begin with and had Willie Mays versus a lefty, or he could have countered or whatever. But a couple more things. Once again, you brought in a very tired pitcher in the 9th inning in Zach Britton, who was also insanely tired. Honestly, righty-lefty is not important enough to me to warrant bringing in a guy with yellow energy. Like I said, you probably didn't know that this works this way, but you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage here just for righty-lefty. Not to mention, once you bring Britton in, he could counter with a righty with a player like Bellinger, who I believe for your opponent was playing first base. No, your opponent had Freddie Freeman. Anyway, Bellinger either plays first or outfield, who are very common positions to have on your bench. And so what I'm trying to get at is that it's very easy for your opponent to counter this move right here. So you could have put yourself in a very, very bad spot by bringing in a tired lefty, and then your opponent could have just pinch hit for Bellinger with like Frank Thomas or like Vlad Guerrero or someone like that. And you'd be in a world of hurt. Not to mention, Zach Britton is very slow to the plate, and your opponent has Willie Mays and his 92 speed and 98 stealing on base. So you're exposing yourself to giving up a free steal. Pretty much once you're in this situation, you need to be slide stepping every single pitch, and you kind of disrespected your opponent by not slide stepping twice in a row. This gets back to mind games a little bit, but your opponent's making a mistake by not stealing here on you. This should have been a free base, honestly. Just a lot of mistakes. I think just going to Kenley Jansen here and trying to get the save would have been fine. At this point in the game, a healthy Kenley Jansen versus a lefty is way better than a tired Zach Britton trying to get through this inning. So I actually think this bullpen decision is the entire reason that you end up blowing this lead in the 9th inning, even though you get a pretty shitty animation there. But yeah, I just think you should have gone to Jansen or someone else, honestly. Another thing here, now that the tying and winning runs are both in scoring position and you have first base open, this needs to be an intentional walk situation. You try to put the infield in. You do put the infield in, but you just need to intentionally walk this guy. The reason is the runner on first doesn't matter at all, because if the runner from second scores, he wins anyway, right? So you just intentionally walk this guy, and now it sets you up for a force play at home and also potentially a double play if you want to take it and just let him tie the game. Depends. But anyway, the absolute best baseball decision here is to intentionally walk this batter to set up a force play at any base, because the batter standing on first, or allowing this batter to go to first base, has absolutely no impact on the game result whatsoever for the reasons that I said earlier. So this is another mistake, pitching to this guy. You actually get the out. You actually get 2 outs in a row, I think, which is huge, but your opponent ends up tying the game at 7. So one last thing, and then we'll call it. As always, man, my DMs are open if you have any additional questions, and I hope this was helpful for you as it was for everyone else. Just as I've been feeling it out as I've been doing this and talking, I feel like this has been one of the most educational coaching videos that I've done so far. So I'm feeling good about it. Let me know down in the comment section how it is, and subscribe if you haven't yet. And yeah, hit me up if you want coaching for yourself. So we're in the top 10th. You actually brought Jansen in last inning for one batter and got the out. And then you hit a no doubt two-run home run with your cap. So now you're up 9-7 in the 10th, and you end up pinch hitting for Kenley Jansen. I want to tell you that there's a very strong argument that you should not be pinch hitting at all in this situation. What you did is you just took a 2-run lead, and Kenley Jansen is probably the best relief pitcher in the game. And in addition to that, I believe, in addition to that, you have no outs and no one on base. So if it were me, proper English, I wouldn't even pinch hit here, because the trade-off isn't worth it. Like, you're already up by 2. You're going to be pinch hitting with no one on base, so like even best case scenario, you hit a bomb, it's only worth 1 run. Whereas you could just leave Jansen in and have the best pitcher in the game try to save the 2-run lead that you have. So you can just eat this out. It's still only the first out of the inning, and then you have the top of the order coming up. I just wouldn't have pinch hit here. I would have stuck with Kenley and tried to close this game out. So that's pretty much all I have to say for this one. Nicely played game though, man. Way to keep your head. Way to pull it out in extra innings. Like I said, hope this was helpful for you. Hope this was helpful for everyone. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.